What's up, guys? Joey here at schoolofmotion.com. Welcome to day 9 of 30 days of After Effects. Quick shout out to the Department of Motion Design at the Ringling College of Art and Design for sponsoring this. Without them, this would not be possible. And what we're going to talk about today is, it's kind of not the sexiest thing, but it's reality. And what I'm going to show you how to do is to morph the letter A into the letter B into the letter C. And it may sound simple, but in order to really control it and make it feel good and animate exactly the way you want, it takes a lot of manual labor. And that's something that I find a lot of new motion designers kind of shy away from. Everyone's looking for the plug-in, everyone's looking for the trick. Sometimes there is no trick, you just have to do it. And in order to do that, you have to understand animation principles and you have to really understand After Effects. So we're gonna dive in and I'm gonna show you some strategies, some ways to think about it, and we're really just gonna we're gonna beat this animation into submission until it feels good. So let's hop into After Effects and get started. So there's a little bit of a trick to this, but learning that part is actually the easy part. What's a little bit more difficult and what really sells this type of morph is understanding some animation principles and using those to just make the motion feel a little bit better. Okay, so first, why don't I show you sort of the basic idea of how to do one of these letter morphs. So let's make a new comp, and we'll just do 1920 by 1080. And the first thing you're gonna wanna do is just, type out a letter. This doesn't have to be a letter. This could be any shape that you created in Illustrator or After Effects. Doesn't really matter as long as it's a vector shape. Okay, so you've got an A, and we'll want to turn that into a B. So let's also type out a B, and then we'll want to turn that into a C. Okay, so those will be our 3 letters that we want to morph between. And first thing you need to do is, right now this is just like a type layer, and what we want to do is turn that into a vector shape, because then we can use After Effects' built-in tweening, so we can sort of morph between shapes. So let's select all of these, go up to Layer, and just hit. I got to do it one at a time. Never mind. Layer. Here it is. Create shapes from text. You got to do it one layer at a time, apparently. So that's A. All right, and let's turn these off for a minute. Look at this. All this is a shape layer, and if you look in here, if I open up the contents of that shape layer, you can see that there are 2 paths, and if I select them, you can see this path is this little inner hole here, and then this path is the outer, the main shape, the A. Below that, there is a merge paths modifier, right, from this add menu, and that is merging those 2 paths together, so it's knocking out the hole in the A. So that's the A. All right, let's do the same thing with the B and the C. So I'm going to say create shapes from text. There's the B, and you can see that the B has 3 holes in it, or 3 paths. The main path, and then it's got 2 holes. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing with the C. So C, create shapes from text. There you go. Cool. All right. So now the reason we did that is because we're going to want to copy the path from each letter, and in some cases multiple paths, and copy that keyframe and put it onto a new shape layer, and that way we're going to be able to morph between the letters. All right. So let's start by doing A to B. So what I'm going to do is make a new empty shape layer, and I'll just call this A-B-C. Okay, so right now this shape layer has nothing in it. If I come in, there's nothing in the contents. There's no paths or anything. So the first thing we need to do is add a path. All right, and then I'm going to open up this A outlines. Okay, and remember that's just there's 2 paths for this A outlines. Okay, so this path, this first one here, is the inner hole, and this one is the main shape. So I'm going to start with that one. The way you copy a path from one shape to another is you set a keyframe, copy that keyframe, and then come up here and just paste that keyframe. Okay? And you can see that it's much smaller than this because I've probably scaled this up. This is scaled to 209.3. So let me scale this to 209.3 just so it matches. All right. Make it easier to line things up. All right, cool. So if we turn off our kind of reference shapes here, we're still not seeing anything because in addition to having a path in your shape layer, you also need to have a fill or a stroke, otherwise you won't see anything. So let's add a fill. There's our fill, all right? And the default color is red. Let's just make it white. Cool, okay? So all we have right now is one path in our shape layer, and obviously to make an A, we need two paths. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate path one. So now we have two paths that are inside the shape layer. And I'm gonna copy, so let me, by the way, the way that I'm sort of revealing these properties here is I'm double tapping U. A lot of you may know if you hit U, it's gonna reveal any keyframed properties. If you double tap U, it shows you any properties that have been changed from their default or anything you've added. So that's why I can now just quickly see the paths. So I know that I've already copied over the main path, and now I need to copy over the second path. So I'm gonna hit the stopwatch to set a keyframe. I'm gonna copy that keyframe, just Command C, and I'm gonna come up here to my shape layer, and on the second path, I'm gonna paste that, okay? So now I've got two paths, all right? And that's really all there is to it. Now I've created my A again. And I don't have a merge paths in here, but it seems to still be working. But I like to put a merge paths in there just in case. It just sort of, it makes sure that, you know, as I make letters that may have more than one hole in it, it's gonna make sure everything works right. So the default mode of merge paths is add. And all that does is it adds the two shapes together. If you change that to merge, what it will do is any path that's inside another path will be a hole, and if it goes outside that path, it becomes another shape. So that's pretty useful, and that's actually the default way when you create a shape outline from a type layer. That's actually what it's going to give you. If I open up the contents of this, look in here, you'll see that the merge paths that it creates is set to merge mode. All right, so I'm gonna leave it like that. Cool, so now we've got the A. Now, how are we gonna transition from A to B? Okay, so one problem we're gonna have to figure out is, you know, just how are we gonna get the shapes to morph? But another thing is, B has two holes in it. So there's actually three paths that make up the B. There's only two in the A. So we need to figure out what we're gonna do to deal with that. So first, why don't we open up the B so we can see the three paths that make up that letter. And I'll put keyframes on all three just so I can grab those and copy and paste. So let's come up here, let's hide the B, and let's reveal our layer. All right, and you've got path 1 and path 2, and I know I'm also gonna need a path 3. So I'm gonna duplicate path 2, okay, because the B has three paths, I'm gonna need three paths. Okay, so let's go forward 1 second. And let's grab one by one the first part of the B, which is the main outline. Copy that. And all I'm gonna do is paste it on path 1, okay? And you can see that it morphs from the A to the B. Now, it does a terrible job of it, okay? But we'll fix that in a minute. That's essentially what we're doing, okay? And hopefully you all just went, aha, I get it. We're just copying the path of one letter and having it morph automatically into another letter. And I'll show you how to control it better in a second. So then we're gonna copy the second hole, this hole right here, okay? Paste it there. And then we're going to copy the third path, this hole here, and paste it on path 3, okay? So now, here's the B, and here's the A. Okay, now, we've got a couple of problems. One, the morph is kind of happening in this weird way. And also, our hole on the A is gone, and that's because we've basically got this third path here on the A, which we don't actually need, is sort of filling the hole back in. And so let's start by just turning off path 2 and 3. I'm going to turn off the visibility of those, okay? So let's just deal with the first part of this morph, the basic shape. So what's happening is After Effects looks at each mask or each shape, and it interpolates between this shape and this shape. And what I want you to notice is one of these points on this shape looks a little different. It's this one here. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there's a little circle around this shape, okay? And let me see if I can make this an easier color to see. Yeah, it's a little bit better. You can see there's a little circle around this. What that means is that that is the first point of that path. So if you were counting these points, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if we go to the B, well, now the first point is over here. And if you watch, that first point corresponds between each shape. So this point is going to move way over here, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. What would make more sense, because the first point of the B is in the bottom left corner, it'd be great if the first point of the A was also in the bottom left corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select path 1. I'm going to select that point, and then I'm going to control click it. And I'm going to go up to mask and shape path and say set first vertex. And you can see now that this point has changed, and this is now the first vertex. So when it morphs, it's going to morph a lot more naturally. Okay? Get a much better result. We're still getting some crisscross here, but I'll show you how to deal with that in a minute. Okay, so then the next thing is, how do we deal with these paths? So path 2, if we look at that, the first vertex is the bottom left corner. And then on this shape, it's the bottom left corner. So that first vertex we don't really need to change, and that's actually working fairly well. Now this third one is a problem, because on the B, right, that's where that hole's supposed to be, but there is no hole on the A, or there shouldn't be 2 holes on the A. So what do we want to do with this shape when it's time to look at the A? And what I did was I just selected that keyframe. So it selects basically all the points in that mask. And then I just double clicked it, and I just scale it way down like this, okay? And actually maybe a better thing to do would be to copy the shape of it when it's sort of already in the right shape for a B. So let me copy this keyframe, come over here and paste it. And then I can just double click so I can transform this whole shape. And I'm gonna move it here, and I'm gonna just try to scale it down so it's so small you don't actually see it. All right, really small. There we go. Okay, so all I've done is I've scaled that path down so small that you don't actually notice it, and then it will kind of grow, right, as the B kind of forms. Okay, I'm gonna select all these keyframes, I'm gonna easy ease them, and we'll just do a RAM preview, right? And you can see that already it's not bad, right? It's a decent morph from an A to a B. And if you just wanted it to be really kind of, linear, and feel very synthetic and not have a bunch, not too playful, then this is kind of how you do it. I wanted to try and sell it a little bit more and make it feel a little bit cooler and funkier and more organic, right? There's that word that your clients probably like to use, organic. So what I did was I just tried to apply some animation principles to it. So the first thing I did was I sort of looked at what is the general direction that everything's moving for this transition. And to me, it feels like this piece of the A kind of swings up here, right? And then this part kind of pushes left to right. So I felt like in general, there's kind of a counterclockwise movement happening. So I wanted to reinforce that. So I'm gonna move the anchor point of this layer to this corner here, to the bottom left corner. And that way I can just rotate the whole shape like this. And what I wanna do is have a little bit of an anticipation move. So let me stop the morph from happening for a second. And I'm gonna first have the A lean the opposite direction that it's gonna move while it's morphing. So I'm gonna go forward maybe 4 frames, and I'm just gonna have it lean a little bit, okay? And it's gonna hang there just for a split second, and then it's gonna swing back over maybe 12 frames, and it's gonna swing way back this way, okay? And when it's swinging way back this way, that's when I want this morph to be happening. So I want it to feel like it leans, and then the momentum of this piece of the A pulling up is kind of throwing it backwards, right? And then I want it to rotate back, but overshoot just a little bit, and then land at 0, okay? So let me make all of my rotation keyframes easy ease. Go into the graph editor and let's take a look at this. Let's make sure we're in the value graph, okay? What I want is for this to gently lower, and I want it to hang there So I'm gonna pull this Bezier handle out so that it takes a longer time for it to lean back, and then it's gonna whip back and hang there for a minute, and then it's gonna come back down and ease into the final position. Okay? And again, if you're not comfortable reading animation curves yet, go back and watch Intro to Animation Curves. All right? So now, if you look at that, it's working a lot better because it feels like that it's pulling, it's kind of whipping that layer up, right? And it doesn't quite work perfectly yet. And so, now what I want to do is actually tweak the shape, that's being created. So, I'm anticipating the move by rotating the A forward, okay? But then I could also anticipate using the shape of the A. So what I could do is I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna copy this keyframe on the main shape and paste it. So that so then what I can do is I can go forward, okay? And now on this keyframe, I'm gonna actually come in here and I'm gonna change the shape of this A a little bit. Now it's leaning forward, so what I want it to do is actually kind of overextend a little bit, right? Like it's kind of getting ready. And it's just a subtle thing, right? But it's just gonna extend down a little bit, and then it's gonna whip up like that. Now when it whips up like this, okay, about the time it gets to the middle, I would kind of like this piece to almost act like a rope and be kind of curling up a little bit. So I'm gonna actually pull this Bezier handle and pull this up a little bit. I'm just gonna help it kind of swing, and I'm gonna just, using the normal kind of mask tools, I'm gonna create this swing. Now this keyframe here, it's automatically set to easy ease, and I don't want that because then it's gonna make this shape kind of stop when it gets here. So I'm gonna control click it and say rove across time. And because it's a mask keyframe, I can't do that. So I'm actually gonna hit command and click it twice, and it's gonna turn into an auto Bezier curve, okay? So if you have it as an easy ease, if you hit F9 on this, it's gonna have a little stick in the middle of that move. And I can show you what that looks like real quick. If I turn off rove across time and easy ease that. I mean, it's not too bad, but you can see how it kind of sticks there, and that's not what I want. So if I turn on auto Bezier, then it's a little bit smoother. And then what's cool is I could actually pull this back a little bit and play with the timing so that it feels like it's actually got a little more momentum to it, right? So it leans in and sucks up. And you can do this for as many little, intermediate pieces as you want. What you may want is as this pulls away, right, as the A kind of rotates backwards, this leg immediately follows, and it would probably be delayed by a couple of frames. So let's actually go forward a few frames, maybe 3 frames. And actually, let me come back to this frame here, and I'm gonna hit Command R to bring up my rulers. I'm gonna put a guide here, right where that bottom of the A is, so I can remember where it is. And I'm gonna change my background color here to black just so I can see this a little bit better. There we go. All right, so I'm giving myself a reference. So now I can go forward 3 frames, and I can keep that A on that line for 2 more frames. And I'm just gonna command double click this so it's an auto Bezier keyframe now. Turn off my guides, right? So now it kind of feels like it's sticking to the ground a little bit, right? And this actually might work better as an easy ease keyframe, right? Because now what that means is it'll sort of accelerate as it whips this shape up. And now I kind of want it to be a little longer because it feels like there's a little bit more momentum to it. Right, so it's kind of, there we go. Yeah, it's whipping it up, and it may even want to come out a little bit more and kind of curl, right? So maybe it wants to come up like this and kind of curl like that. And if you're not happy with any of the shapes, just change them. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, there we go. All right, see how it kind of whips that shape up and then sucks it into the B? And it sucks it into the B, but I would kind of like it to be sucked in a little faster, okay? So what I'm gonna do is just, kind of go to where I want that to already be pretty much like it's gonna end up. And then I'm just gonna manually pop in here, and I'm gonna just try to shape this a little bit closer, not all the way finished, but a little bit closer to its final shape. Right, so it's kind of almost like it's springy, you know? And then I'm gonna command double click this so it's an auto Bezier. Yeah, that's feeling pretty good, right? I like that. The other thing is, as this bottom part of the bee kind of pops out, I kind of want it to overshoot a little bit. So it kind of springs back. So I'm gonna go a couple of frames before it ends, and I'm gonna grab these two mask points, and I'm just gonna nudge them out a little bit like that, and just adjust this a tiny bit. And I'll leave that as an easy ease keyframe, because I think it may, for timing, that may actually work pretty well. And that's not bad. See how it just shoots out a little bit? And it's a little bit fast, so I'm just gonna move the ending keyframe out a little bit. Yeah, there we go. All right, so the A to B transition is actually working pretty well for me, and there's a lot of personality to it, and you know, it kind of feels like it's obeying the laws of physics. And you know, the thing is, you know, I showed you guys the trick to get an A to morph into a B, but really to make it feel good, you have to understand animation principles, and you have to understand what makes animation feel good. And you know, I'm gonna get into that a lot on School of Motion, because to me, I think, you know, the fundamentals, they're the hardest things to teach, frankly, but they're also the most important. And if you grasp the fundamentals, then you don't need a bunch of tricks. So there you go. There's A to B. Now, to get from the B to the C, you know, it's exactly the same process. The only difference is you have to get rid of, you know, the two holes in the middle. All right, so let's do that. So let me open up my paths here so I can see path 1, path 2, path 3. And let's go into our C outline layer, and there's only gonna be one path in there, right? Because the C is just one shape. So let me put a keyframe there so I can copy it, and then come up here and on this main shape. So first let's figure out the timing. So this whole thing takes about a second and a little bit longer, okay? So why don't we go forward? We'll have the B hold for 10 frames. So I'm gonna put keyframes on all the paths, and then I'm gonna go forward 1 second. So 10 frames, 20 frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's another second. And I'm gonna copy onto the main path that C keyframe, okay? Let's turn these paths off for a minute, and let's just focus on this first kind of thing that's happening, okay? So, you know, the first thing we had to check was, where is the first vertex point on that mask? And does it make sense where it is on the B in relation to where it is on the C? And just kind of scrubbing back through this, you can see it's working pretty well. And if it's not, just, you know, remember, you just click on a point, or you select a point, you right click it, and you say set as the first vertex of that shape. So this is working pretty well. So first, let's just focus on the basic shapes, right? So what could you do to kind of get that same playful, like it's whipping and kind of, you know, catching itself, and doing something cool like that? What could you do between the B and the C? So looking at this, you know, I can first copy those same rotation keyframes and just paste them again, right? So now it can kind of whip, okay? And that just means that I want to delay this animation a little bit too. All right, so let's re and preview this a few times, take a look at it. All right, so it leans and then it kind of throws back, right? So what I want is I want the momentum of that rotation almost like it's chugging a glass of water or something. You can see like this little pinch point here kind of gets thrown backwards. And so I want that pinch point first to anticipate, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back here and set a keyframe on this path. And then on this keyframe, right, it's leaning in, it's anticipating. So I'm gonna have the shape of the B sort of anticipate that move. So I'm gonna select these points, and I'm just gonna move them out a little bit, all right? And maybe I can also have it, you know, maybe I could have this kind of bow in a little bit like this, right? You know, anything you can do to make it feel like it has a little bit more mass to it. There we go. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so it's gonna kind of lean in. And one thing, another animation principle that helps with stuff like this is the concept of follow through. And follow through is this whole B is rotating forward, and the mass of that, the inertia is going to carry pieces of that B forward. It's going to change the shape, but not at the same time. It's going to be delayed by a couple of frames, right? So if I just have this move happening at the same time, you see how it doesn't really feel right? But if I just delay this a couple of frames, then it feels like it's like an action happening because of the movement, right? And it feels better. Okay, so as it swings back, okay, I want that hole in the C to open up a lot faster. Okay, so I'm gonna manually, first I'm just gonna kind of scrub through and see where these points end up. This point is gonna end up in the middle of the C. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab it and push it here. Okay, and then I'm gonna look at this point here. I'm gonna follow that one, and that one kind of ends up near the top. Okay, so this is actually going to end up more like this. And where does this point end up? Here. Let's follow that one. That one ends up on the bottom. So I'm just going to pull that one down here. So I'm sort of speeding up the movement of some of these points, so that it'll feel, and let's see if I leave that easy ease, if that works better. Let's see. Cool. All right. And that actually helps a lot. Let's just to see, I'm gonna command double click this, turn it to an auto Bezier, and see if I like that any better. I like that better, but now when it comes back down, right, I want it to kind of overshoot back a little bit. So it lands here, boom, and I'm gonna scoot this keyframe back, and then I go forward a couple frames, and I'm just gonna move this and this forward a little bit, okay? Just to make, and you can just see it's a subtle thing. It kind of makes the back of the C kind of bend forward as it gets thrown, okay? Now there's some funky shapes happening at certain points in this transition. You can see right here, you're kind of getting some weird stuff, and it would be really nice to kind of clean that up. Unfortunately, because of some of the limitations of keyframing masks in After Effects, if I put a keyframe here just to fix one little thing, it's actually going to have a keyframe on every single point. So you want to make sure your animation's more or less done, and then you can go deal with those little details. Okay, so let's see what other little things we could do. When this thing kicks back like this, okay, first of all, I want to offset it. So this is the rotation keyframe. That overshoot should be delayed by a couple of frames, so it's follow through, right? I have another tutorial on the site. It's called Animating Follow Through in After Effects. Watch that. It explains the principle pretty simply. It's a lot harder to deal with when you're doing complicated shapes like this. But I just want to kind of, I want to reinforce that any way I can. So even the back of this shape could kind of, be thrown back a little bit, and then as it shoots forward. And maybe another thing we could do too is have the C, like the little extensions of the C open up a little bit, almost like the inertia's throwing them. Let me smooth that out too. What I'm going to do is grab all of these, just these points here. I'm going to double click them. I'm going to move the anchor point down to here and then just open this up a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to grab all of these and maybe that one, and move the anchor point to maybe there, and just open the C up a little bit. So it's gonna open up its arms like that, and then it's gonna close. And on this frame here, this is the frame where it's, this frame. This is the frame where it's just kind of come down, and I want this top part of the C to react to that and kind of overshoot and bend down a little bit, right? And maybe the same on this bottom part, like that. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, you can kind of see it just gives the whole thing a feeling of mass, okay? Cool. That's feeling pretty good. All right, so let's say we're happy with that, and now we can just quickly go through and we can clean up, just kind of help this interpolation happen better. You can see a little pinch point here. So I'm gonna, I'm just gonna go in, and actually an easy way to do this is hit G, bring up your pen tool, hold the Option key, and then you can click and drag these points, and it will kind of reset them but it will make them, you can see that it makes them parallel to each other, which is going to make your curves a whole lot smoother, right? And so this way you can kind of make the shapes a little bit less funky looking in the transition, okay? And make sure you set those points to auto Bezier. There we go. All right. Now the C looks a little weird. Yeah, here, this was drawing my eye, this point right here, right? So I'm just gonna come to this keyframe, fix that real quick. Just make those parallel like this, right? So you don't get that big point sticking out anymore, because that just really drew my eye, okay? And even maybe in here, I might wanna start rounding this out a little bit, just so it, yeah, that helped a lot. There we go. Cool, I'm digging how that's looking. Okay, so we're happy with that, and now we just have to deal with these two, the two holes in the B's that we turned off. So what I'm gonna do is, let's just figure out, well, I mean, what do we wanna do with these? You know, we could have them just shrink and become nothing. Or maybe as this thing rocks back, they shrink, but they kind of fall up. You know, this one kind of goes up into this part, this one kind of goes down into this part of the C, and maybe kind of curve to follow the shape of the C a little bit, and then they shrink and disappear. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line up, let's figure out when we want that move to happen. Maybe what happens is, okay, I'm gonna move the two keyframes so they line up with the first keyframe of the main shape. So this B rocks forward, and so I want both of these pads, I'm gonna select them both, I'm just gonna nudge them forward a little bit, okay, so that they kind of move a little bit, all right? They move forward, and then they're gonna shoot back, and I would say by that point there, I want them gone, okay? So let's select this one, and let's just zoom in here, and let's double click it, and let's just try to move it, okay? And instead of having this path kind of shrink away to nothing the way we did with the first letter transformation that we did, I'm actually gonna do a different trick here. So what I want to happen is I just want that shape to kind of bend a little bit, like it's almost like it's mimicking the curvature of the C a little bit. Something like that. And I do want it to get pretty thin. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this a hold keyframe, go to the next frame, and I'm just gonna move this like way out of the frame somewhere, like way up here, okay? So if you watch that shape, right, it looks like it's disappearing, but it's not as jarring, and I don't really have to worry about hiding it. And it looks like the momentum's just kind of throwing it up there, and it's not happening as fast as I'd like it to. So I'm gonna have that happen quicker. Yeah, like that. Maybe give it one more frame. Cool, that worked pretty well for me. So now I can do the same thing on this last path, right? So we come here, we double click it, we scale it down, move it down to here, zoom in, and then I'm just gonna, let's see here, let's move that shape like that. Just kind of mimic the curve of the C. That's looking good. There we go. Okay, maybe it gets a little smaller. Make that a hold keyframe, go to the next frame, and then just move it completely out of the comp like that. Okay, so now the two holes just kind of go away, right? And there's so much going on that it just kind of makes sense, right? You're just tricking your eye. Cool. We've tweaked a lot to get it to this part, but I mean, you could go even further. You know, the way that those two holes kind of leave, it feels a little bit, it doesn't feel like extreme enough. And so what I might want to do is grab these keyframes here, go into the curve editor. And in the curve editor, you have to be in the speed graph to work with mask points. It's just kind of an unfortunate reality of After Effects. There's no way to use a value graph to change the speed that those things animate at. So you have to go into the speed graph, and the way the speed graph works, visually it makes no sense to me, but if you take Bezier handles and you pull them out, that's kind of accentuating the ease, okay? So I'm just gonna make these a little more extreme, right? So all it's doing is it's gonna make these two holes, when they move, they're gonna slowly accelerate and then they're gonna go really fast right before they disappear, okay? All right, so let's look at our whole animation now and see what we've got. So A turns to B, B turns to C, okay? And there's a ton of personality to it. It feels good. You know, looking at the C, I would still nitpick some things, and I'd probably want to spend another 10, 15 minutes, like, you know, almost going frame by frame and trying to clean up like any little weirdness that I'm seeing, you know, like in here, it almost looks like the curve just could be worked on a little bit more, you know, like I really, it's bothering me, people. I'm super anal with stuff like this. See, this is gonna make me feel better. I'll sleep much better tonight now that I did that. So there you go. That's the trick, people. It takes a lot of work, and the key is to really practice your animation principles, and really try to give these things some weight, and some personality, and you know, think about like some funny things that could happen, and you know, like could the holes of these bees kind of blow up like balloons and then pop? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you could do, and you can also reinforce the motion that you're seeing in other ways. I mean, what if I, you know, as the first leg of this A whips up, maybe like I animate a couple of little pieces that almost break off and dissipate, you know, just to give it a little more motion. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do to make this cooler. So anyway, I hope you guys learned some tricks, and I hope that, you know, this kind of opened your eyes to maybe a different workflow in After Effects, and actually using After Effects as a true animation tool, which a lot of times you kind of forget that, you know, yeah, you can just put 2 keyframes and have a layer move from here to here, but when you want to have something feel alive and have a ton of personality, you really got to get in there and get your hands dirty. So I hope this was useful. Thank you guys. If you like this tutorial, please share this on Facebook, on Twitter, email your friends, leave comments on the Vimeo page or on schoolofmotion.com. I really appreciate it. The more feedback I get, the better I can make these tutorials. And I hope to see you guys again on the next episode of 30 Days of After Effects. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that was eye-opening. You know, sometimes After Effects can't do all the work for you. You have to get in there and you need to really add a bunch of keyframes to make things do what you want. And once you get to that point, you're gonna have so much more control over your animation, and people want that. People want, you know, motion designers that can really, really control things and make them feel good. So thank you for watching. Thank you to the Department of Motion Design at the Ringling College of Art and Design for sponsoring this. Check out the contest they're sponsoring if you haven't already. It's an incredible opportunity. And if you like this tutorial, if you like School of Motion, please tell other people about it, share, and definitely join the mailing list. You get a lot of cool information, and you get it first if you're on the mailing list. So thank you guys so much. I will see you next time.